That happened. And the wildest part is, it all started with ducks. Ducks, and the soft splash of a dog chasing sunbeams on water that should have only ever belonged to me. My name's Eli Turner. And that pond, Maple Hollow Lake, was supposed to be my quiet place, the spot I built my whole dream around, right on the edge of Ridgewater Estates, just far enough out that the grass still smells like morning after a rain, close enough that trouble finds you if you don't watch your back. The first time I met Mara Hayes, she had this way of looking at you like you'd interrupted her dress. Rehearsal, every word polished, every smile sharpened to a point. She showed up at my mailbox, clipboard, perfect teeth, not a hair out of place, and handed me a neighborhood map with my pond shaded in blue. "We're so glad to have a new neighbor," she said, "and you'll be happy to know we maintain all bodies of water for the community." I nearly laughed out loud, thought it was a joke. She didn't flinch. I pointed to my deed, the survey, the county lines. She just smiled and said, "Sometimes paperwork doesn't reflect reality. You know what I mean? That's when you realize your..." Benches I'd never seen before appeared near the water. Flyers on my mailbox about volunteer cleanup days. Neighbors I'd never met showing up with folding chairs, acting like they'd always belonged. Mara was everywhere, holding court, shaking hands, laughing a little too loud, while I stood there wondering when my own pond became a community theater. Then came the posts online. Photos of a dock, not even my dock, circulating with my address pinned, people tagging the wrong GPS, as if you could redraw property lines with Facebook likes. I hired a surveyor, got a fresh set of maps and a not-so-fresh invoice. Sent polite emails, tried to reason. Mara responded with letters full of community rights and amicable resolutions, which, in HOA language, is code for give up and play nice. I started feeling like the only adult in a room full of kindergartners fighting over crayons. Except these crayons had legal fees attached. It blew up at the town lunch. Mara put together this whole Pond Day event. Flyers, banners, even a band set up on somebody's borrowed grass. She gave a little speech about stewardship, community, all the warm and fuzzy stuff. Then she called me out in front of everybody. "Maybe it's time to be a team player, Eli." And I'll admit, said something blunt. The room went silent, airtight like a glass about to crack. People picked sides, some out of loyalty to Mara, some because they liked free picnics. You could feel the ground shifting, and not in my favor. Then, in classic small-town fashion, fate threw in a twist nobody saw coming. Mara tried to drive a rental car down to the pond for a staged arrival photo op. Stepped out in her Sunday best, thinking she'd land herself a spot in the neighborhood Facebook Hall of Fame. But she misjudged the bank, and that shiny car slid nose first into the mud. I swear, for a split second, it looked like the pond swallowed half her ego in the... just a little. But instead of retreating, Mara doubled down. More flyers, angrier letters, accusations of unauthorized improvements, and liability to the community. She brought in contractors at dawn to pile rocks along the shoreline, build up what she called erosion control. Contractors don't ask questions when the check clears. That's how falsehoods get built, stone by stone. Until one day you look up and your life's been rewritten without you even noticing. I called the county. They sent a letter, then sent 2 deputies, boots muddy, faces unimpressed, to read a cease and desist order at sunrise. Mara argued, tried to make it a show, but this time, the crowd wasn't buying it. People started asking questions, digging into old emails, realizing maybe the truth wasn't so tidy after all. When the HOA board finally met, all the alliances that held Mara up started to unravel. Folks don't like feeling tricked, especially not over something as simple as a pond. In the end, Mara was suspended. Contractors packed up and left. The county confirmed my boundaries, and that pond, every last inch, was mine again. The benches got moved back. There was no victory parade. No slow-motion shot of me pumping my fist. I just watered the garden and let the paperwork do the talking. You want to believe that's the end of it, but you know how it goes. Some folks never let a grudge go cold. Mara still had her defenders, neighbors who saw her as a hero for the public good, and the grapevine just got louder. I started getting questions everywhere I went, hardware store, grocery line, about whose side I was on, as if there was a scorecard. What stuck with me most? Ownership isn't just about paper and signatures. It's about standing your ground, telling your story. Power always knocks softly first. Clipboard, smile, small request. Then a little louder, and if you ignore it long enough, it's breaking down your door. Now, when I look out at Maple Hollow, I see more than just water. I see every late-night light, every meeting, every pair of muddy boots that showed up when it mattered. The pond's calm again, geese skimming the edges, the dog chasing. Sunbeams, the dock right where it's always been. But I know, and maybe you do too, that a neighborhood can turn on a dime. A simple map becomes a battleground, and the only way to set it right is for enough people to remember where the lines were drawn and why they matter. So, if you've ever had a neighbor try to turn community into a weapon or watched a little dispute turn into a war, let me know in the comments. What do you think matters more, paperwork, witnesses, or just the plain stubbornness to stand your ground? Maybe you've been on the other side, watched a leader cross the line. I want to hear that too. Hit subscribe if you like stories where the stakes are small but the fights are real. And share this with someone who knows that justice doesn't always come wrapped in a bow. But sometimes, if enough folks speak up, the truth stands a chance that you'd think after all that. The deputies, the muddy rental car, Mara's polished grin finally cracking. The neighborhood would just quiet down, right? You'd think folks would let it go, let the grass grow back over whatever was said and done. But out here, trouble doesn't quit easy. It just changes shape. Some people, when they lose the first round, don't walk away. They circle, lick their wounds, and look for a new opening, especially when there's pride on the line and too many people still whispering at the mailbox. That fall, the pond looked almost untouched. Morning mist rising off the water, geese calling like nothing had ever happened. But the air was different, and not just for me. Mara disappeared from the board meetings, but her name stayed on people's lips. It was like every conversation at the hardware store had a secret second half. Did you hear what Mara's doing now? Wonder what Eli will do next. Folks picked at that story like a scab that wouldn't heal. One Saturday, I found a letter taped to my truck window. A real old-school move. All block letters and no signature, saying, "Keep your pond private if you must, but don't expect us to keep pretending you're part of the community." I laughed, shook my head. You know what I mean? After all that drama, we're still back in junior high, except the lockers are mailboxes and the gossip is just meaner. But the thing is, I could feel it. A chilly politeness when I walked past, waves at the end of the driveway that didn't quite reach the eyes. That's how it works in places like this. Nobody says it straight, but you know when you've been marked. It would have been easy to just hole up, walk the dog, ignore it all. But my dad used to say, you can't fix what you won't face. So I kept showing up, at the diner, at town cleanups, at the same Tuesday meetings where Mara used to rule. People didn't know what to do with that. Some folks started talking to me again, slowly, testing the waters. Others doubled down on the silent treatment, but I noticed something shifting. The ones who'd been loudest for community access didn't seem so sure anymore, not after the contractors left and the benches got moved. There's always a handful who just want to be on the winning side, no matter what side that is. Then, about a month later, a new twist. There's this retired guy, Frank, lives 2 houses up, ex-cop, walks with a limp, always minds his own business. One morning he knocks on my door, hands me a cup of coffee like we're old friends, and says, "Mind if I fish off your dock?" I just stare at him, trying to read the angle. He shrugs, says, "Look, Mara never asked, but you're the only one who's treated me decent since I moved here. Thought you might like company that comes with a quiet rod, not a clipboard." That hit me harder than I expected. We fished for hours that morning. Didn't catch much, just enough to remind me why I love the place. Frank told stories about his old beat, the way neighborhoods used to settle things face to face. Not with anonymous letters or Facebook mobs. He said, "You keep doing what you're doing, Eli. Places like this need stubborn folks, or the wrong kind of people end up running the show." I didn't know it at the time, but Frank talking to me at the dock started to change things. It was like a little permission slip. Suddenly it was okay for other folks to be friendly again. Of course, not everyone was ready to move on. That winter, somebody tried another stunt, filed a bogus noise complaint with the county, said my late-night dog walks were a nuisance. County guy came out, had a laugh, told me to keep an eye out anyway. I found paw prints in the fresh snow, not from my dog, but from some nosy neighbor trying to prove a point. I guess the lesson is some people would rather start a fight than admit they were wrong. But you know what? The weirdest part is how small these big battles look once you're on the other side of them. Spring came back around. The pond thawed, the grass grew in thick, and the benches stayed where they belonged. Frank kept showing up, sometimes with his grandkids, sometimes with extra coffee. A few other neighbors started waving again. Some even brought over tomatoes from their garden. It's never perfect. There's still folks who cross the street rather than say hello, and I don't expect that'll change soon. But most days, the water's calm, and the fights feel farther away. Every once in a while, I catch sight of Mara, different haircut, same tight smile, out jogging past the pond, pretending she doesn't see me. I just tip my hat and keep on working, because I've learned my peace doesn't depend on who approves, only on knowing I held my ground without becoming what I was up against. So, that's the real end, or at least as much of an end as any of these stories get. Neighborhoods remember longer than you'd think, but they also forget if you let them. What matters is you. Decide the line you're not willing to cross, even if it means standing by yourself for a while. Let me know if you've stuck it out through a feud like this, or if you ever found an ally where you least expected one. Drop your stories down below. Who knows, maybe the next battle's not about a pond, but about who gets to write the story of the place you call home. And if you like a little grit with your community drama, you know what to do. Subscribe, share, and tell someone who'd get a kick out of a mess that almost cost a quiet pond, but wound up giving back something even better. See you on the next one.